So if you've been paying attention to what's going on in the world, and I've done quite a few videos talking about this, where from people's standpoint that appreciate freedom, what the government's plan, when you look at the "you will own nothing and be happy" agenda, when you look at the climate change, when you look at what's going on with, oh, you need to eat less meat, we're going to shut down combustion vehicles. I just got home from work at the hospital. I'm actually here in New York. This is my old Nebraska shirt when I was in Nebraska, but we're here in New York. One thing, if you ever watch, I'll leave the link below. Watch Ronald Reagan's "A Point of No Return." It was a speech that he gave back in 1987, in which he warned that the nation needed to push back against socialism and communism because it was encroaching upon the nation. And the people had to make a choice because the people kept advocating for socialism. Of course, socialism always leads to communism due to scarcity. When you have too much scarcity, the government will then seize the means of production and take authority over all of the resources. Basically, the government owns everything. It's kind of what you see today, right? You look at companies, for example, like BlackRock. You look at, I forget the name of the other one that everybody basically invests through. But in any event, you have these big companies that are just basically used by the government to purchase assets to keep the financial markets afloat, in essence, to keep the bubble inflated, because they don't want deflation. The system, of course, can't afford deflation. And you see huge sums of money, of course, being printed. A lot of this stuff was voted on. This was the stuff that was advocated a lot by the boomers. And the boomers voted in a lot of wealth for themselves. They voted in their children, their grandchildren, and their great-grandchildren. They basically voted in all of the money. And then they look at the Gen Z and Millennials, and they say, you're just lazy. Meanwhile, they voted for Medicare, for Medicaid, Social Security, tax credits out the wazoo. They voted for cheap, low-interest loans. And whenever the government said, hey, we're spending a little bit too much money, the moment shit got hard, a lot of these boomers voted for when companies were going out of business, like Ford. And they were like, oh, you need to do something. You need to bail them out. This is what they vote for. They vote for bailouts. There's no such thing as bailouts in capitalism. If you fail because you have a poor business plan, because you don't cut spending, then you go out of business. And that is capitalism. But in socialism, what you end up with is bailouts. And this is what you get, where the government prints money that's going to cause inflation for the people in the future to save the people today. And this is basically what the boomers voted for. Between pension bailouts, there's a lot of companies that have pensions, and pensions are nothing but a Ponzi scheme, just like the stock market is a Ponzi scheme, just like 401ks are a Ponzi scheme. But all of this stuff was voted in for. And at every turn where the generations that came before us had the opportunity to say, no, we're not going to go this route. We're going to limit our spending. We're going to endure the hard times. We're going to pay off the debt. They opted not to do that. They opted to vote for more spending. And instead of having their taxes raised, because they weren't going to have their taxes raised, because it's not fair, corporations need to pay their fair share. So what does the government do? The government causes inflation. Corporations raise their prices, and then the government reaps the taxes through the corporations via inflation, because the people refuse to allow for deflation, and they refuse to have their taxes raised, and they refuse to cut spending. Remember Obamacare, when Obama was running back in 2012, and the big thing was about, we need to cut Medicare and Medicaid. We're spending too much on healthcare. And what did the boomers do? The boomers ran out there, oh, you're going to cut grandma's Medicaid, you're going to cut grandma's healthcare. And what was the result? there were many Republicans back then that said it's going to balloon the spending, because you had people who were boomers that had pre-existing conditions, right? That was the big topic. Pre-existing conditions, and should someone with a pre-existing condition pay more? And of course, the illustration was given, hey, if you're a poor driver, if you've been in too many car accidents, then you need to pay more insurance because you're more risky to insure. And of course, the same, right? It was given as an illustration. The same thing is for people who are overweight, don't want to manage their weight, they eat whatever they want, they do drugs, etc. Those people are more risky to insure medically and should contribute more to the system. And people were like, oh my God, that's terrible. How can you even suggest such a thing? Basing people on their pre-existing condition. But this is what we got. And now healthcare is ridiculous. I remember I went to go for a simple blood work. I just wanted to have my cholesterol checked. I went for a routine checkup at a clinic. I didn't even see like a real doctor. I saw a student doctor because it's supposed to be cheaper. And I was there for maybe 20 minutes. Between that visit and them checking my blood, the hospital wanted to charge me $750 something just for that visit. Another time when I was in Ohio, I went for a routine visit to go see the doctor. I didn't even see a doctor. I saw a nurse practitioner who's supposed to be cheaper than a doctor. It cost me $300 for a 15-minute visit. This is the problem with skyrocketing healthcare costs. And because most Americans don't pay their healthcare, only 25 cents for every dollar of healthcare costs is paid for by the taxpayer. Is paid for by the taxpayer via outright taxation. The other 75% is paid for through inflation, where the government prints the money out of thin air, and it causes inflation, and healthcare costs skyrocket. Because these people come to the hospital, they don't have to pay anything. They sit there, oh my God, I gotta pay a $10 copay to see the doctor. And I'm like, bitch, I just paid $300. Fuck you and your copay. But this is what you get. And it is what it is. There's absolutely nothing that can be done about the system. Ronald Reagan warned the boomers back then. He said, your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren are going to pay the price. And he warned them, he said, don't go this route. Avoid socialism, cut spending, reduce the size of government. And they didn't listen. They chose to sacrifice their offspring, their children, their grandchildren, and their great-grandchildren, their prospects, and they burdened everybody with all of this debt. And now most of these people are on the way out. By 2030, all baby boomers will be 65 and older. So most of these people don't care if the shit gonna collapse. They're like, I ain't gonna be here. That's your problem. And it's like, no, you're the one that made this problem. And at the end of the day, what are the people gonna do? What are the young people gonna do? The young people are going to experience the hard times of communism, where the government will seize the means of production, the you will own nothing, be happy. Well, if you don't own anything, who does own everything? That is what communism is. And for a lot of people who are disenfranchised, who already don't own anything, they're like, well, shit, if the government's going to take care of me, then that's better than my life right now, because I don't own anything to begin with. And so for them, they're like, shit, yeah, let's go headlong into socialism. Let's go headlong into communism. But if you're someone who does own things, if you're a person who does own freedom, this is your worst nightmare. This is the stuff that your great-grandfather maybe went to war and died to fight against. What Ronald Reagan warned the nation. But democracies always end in socialism, and socialism always ends in communism, because you get shortages. Everywhere I go, from state to state, there's nothing but shortages. People don't want to work. I went recently to an Applebee's over here, and they told me the same thing. They're like, we're short. We can't get people to work. Same thing at the hospital. Can't get people to work. It is what it is. And as time goes by, little by little, the only thing that's stopping America from going full-blown communism is that the dollar is the world reserve. That is the only thing holding this nation up. When that goes away, there will be nothing. The people will fall into poverty, and the government will do everything that they can to save themselves, to retain power. And that's why they push so hard to emasculate men, because under those circumstances, it's the responsibility of the men to shoulder their rifle. But many men nowadays are single, have no family, no girlfriend, no wife, nothing to fight for. Many young people today really just want to see the world burn as a result of having no prospects. And so that's why I believe that America will fall into communism. And many nations that are already on the verge of falling into communism, and we'll see full-blown communism throughout most countries. Hopefully there'll be freedom somewhere for people to find refuge in. But at the very least, America will definitely go to war with whatever army that they can muster. If the best that they can muster is trannies and independent women, then so be it. They will sacrifice them too. Just like Ukraine. Ukraine sacrificed all their men, and now they're willing to sacrifice their women. And if you think that that shit won't happen here, you are fooling yourself. But this is what the people voted for. Every time they have the opportunity to buckle down and endure the hard times, the people complain and ask for the government to bail them out. And eventually, you run out of road. And it is what it is. The best thing that you can do if you're a single man is to stay single and to diversify the skills that you have. Because if worse comes to worse and you're like, I need to dip out, you need to have skills that will be able to transfer from one nation to wherever you are going to go. If you're someone like me, you're stuck with a nursing license, you're asked out. You're basically stuck here. You'd have to completely leave that behind and transition into a business and hope that you can get in to wherever you think you're going to go. I think America, if worse comes to worse, America will invade Mexico. Because if they have issues with China, Mexico will basically be their manufacturing hub. And if Mexico doesn't want to comply, because Mexico wanted to join BRICS because they're tired of being manipulated by the United States, America will invade Mexico. I guarantee you that will happen. They've already threatened to do such a thing when Mexico said that they were thinking of joining BRICS. And no one said anything. With all the fentanyl coming across, with all the immigrants coming across the border, nobody said anything. Until Mexico said, we're thinking of applying to join BRICS. And then some politician was like, you know what? Maybe we need to invade Mexico and send the military in to find out about this fentanyl. That's all bullshit. That was America's way of letting them know, don't get any ideas of trying to join BRICS. You are our backup plan. It is what it is. America and the children and the great-grandchildren of the boomers will go through some of the hardest times and will experience poverty like they've never experienced before. This is the reality that many Americans are facing and what many young people are going to grow up in. The hard times will create strong men. But the weak times, the weak men that live now, how are the ones that have created the hard times that we are walking into, and they haven't even begun yet. If you're struggling now, if you're having a hard time now providing for yourself, what will you do when America can no longer print dollars and buy goods from overseas because people don't want the dollar? America's already at a trillion in their trade deficit, meaning what they sell by comparison to what they bring in, America has to print $1 trillion to be able to buy the goods and services. That's why we have a huge trade deficit. That's why we have all this debt. When America can't do that, the only thing that will be left is shortages. And they will have to drive the people into poverty. Because if you want to create goods in the country, you have to have cheap labor. Hence why the border is open. Because you need cheap labor. This is one of the reasons why America crushed the European economy, to bring in white Europeans who are skilled labor and to bring over those businesses. This is what's happening right now. Many businesses that are in Germany are leaving Germany and they're coming to the United States. And many skilled labor are leaving Germany because of the inflation and the cost of energy. Who was the one that caused that inflation in energy? The United States, when they blew up the Russian pipeline that was supplying Europe with cheap energy. That was done by their ally. That's why I said, if you don't understand why something was done, just look at the outcome and work your way backwards to understand. If this was the outcome, then what was the goal? If the goal was to hurt Russia, well, then why was the outcome of destroying Europe's economy? Because that was the goal. That was the goal, to destroy Europe's economy. Think about it from the standpoint of 9/11. What was the outcome of 9/11? That America invaded Afghanistan and that they created the Patriot Act, which was basically a police state to survey the American citizen. But I thought the whole point was to make sure that people from abroad weren't coming into the country. But you're telling me that the outcome was that now the government is spying on you as an American citizen? Because that was always the goal. You got to look at the outcome and work your way backwards to understand what the purpose was for many of these things that people sit here and want to debate about. Was there a plane? Wasn't a plane? Did people hear bombs going off, etc.? What was the outcome? As a nurse, we are responsible for implementing interventions and then reevaluating those interventions to get an outcome. If the outcome that you're getting is not what is desired, then you need to change your intervention. But that was the outcome that they wanted. That's why they never changed their intervention. It is what it is. Anyway, this video is getting longer. I'm about to go to bed. I'm off tonight. Hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for watching. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and leave your comment below. And I'll check you next time.